Thanks for joining us. This is live with Miami's Community News, and our guest today is Monique Spence of the Mosquito Control Outreach Program for Miami-Dade County. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And it's nice to see you. Before you were over there,
Yes.
and you were here when Dr. William Petrie, who is the Mosquito Control Director.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
And we talked a lot about mosquitoes back then. It was only a week or so ago. Now we have mosquito season coming up, maybe even upon us. All right. Now you're a spokesman for the county in this division. So tell us about what you do during the day.
Sure.
Oh,
sure.
hold on 1 second. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I want to thank our sponsor, University Credit Union, the team out there, and Michael Welch. Thank you so much.
Sure. So, with the whole outreach aspect, Michael, what I've been able to do is to really try to hone in with the community. I enjoy changing the public's perception about mosquito control and what they can actually do to help us help them with trying to keep mosquitoes away, or at bay, I should say. So, every day is different. I can be in a school doing an outreach effort with kids. I can be at a homeowners association educating the members about how to keep mosquitoes from biting. But the whole aspect of the whole outreach and public information aspect is to really educate the residents and the community as a whole about mosquitoes and then how to keep mosquitoes away.
So most folks that I know, what they're concerned with, it's mosquito season. How do I get bit less? All right. And I'm not sure how many people go and do some things you're going to describe they should do around their homes, but we're all concerned because we have kids or grandkids and we don't want to get bit, right? So what are some of the things, before we get on to the other part, that somebody could do? They're a homeowner, all right? Pretty soon it's going to be really hot outside and it's going to be raining every other day. The dishes are going to be filled with water and the grass is going to be growing and the landscapers love it. The trees are going to be gigantic.
Right.
And that gives life to the mosquitoes.
Yeah. So what we tell folks, we have this campaign, drain and cover, right? So simple, so understood. Drain any standing water that might be around your home. And mind you, that can be something as a bird bath. That could be something as a little kiddie pool, because what ends up happening, because we have rainfall here in South Florida, the kiddie pools, something so simple. What ends up happening, you think that you're turning it over to drain it, but sometimes what ends up happening because of the rainfall, it might be turned over, but the rain will drop and they'll leave a puddle. And what ends up happening just with that little puddle, mosquito breeding can occur. So we tell all of our residents, any standing water that you think might accumulate around your home, to drain it. And again, that can be anything. We've seen mosquitoes breeding in something as small as a bottled water cap.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Sure.
Bottled water cap.
Yes.
How many little guys are in there?
Yeah.
Ready to hatch?
It can be a number. It can be a number. What ends up happening because of the breeding process.
Doctor, she didn't give me a number yet.
And it depends, right? It just depends on how many mosquitoes can actually fit to lay their eggs within that. It could be anywhere from 20 to 150 at any given time.
Do they lay the eggs and leave?
They do. They lay the eggs, and what ends up happening, it goes through a whole what we call a life cycle process, right? And it's a pretty fluid process. But they do. What they'll do is that they'll go and they'll blood feed, and feed. They come and they bite you and suck the blood out of you. Yes, they come and bite, and then what they end up doing is that they lay their eggs. But what ends up happening, the mom of the mosquito bunch can actually hold on to that blood, and they'll continue to use that as a supply for the eggs. And they'll lay the eggs, and over time, within a couple of days, the maturation of the egg will actually turn into a full-fledged mosquito.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
You said for the blood for the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were separate from the eggs. They inject blood.
There's a process that they have based on how the mosquito, the whole life cycle works, and what ends up happening, the supply from the blood from the mom is used to feed and stimulate the eggs.
Oh,
and it allows
this is not a post laying egg event.
Right, exactly. Right. No. It's like food. It's like food for, yeah.
And it's sort of like a placenta hanging out there for a while.
There you go.
From the time the eggs get laid until they're biting me, how long is that?
Yeah, within like a couple of days. Believe it or not, within a couple of days.
So we went out to Lion's Nursery out in the Redlands the other day, and we bought a bunch of flowers to attract caterpillars.
Okay.
And butterflies, actually butterflies. Within a week, all right, the butterflies did what they were supposed to do, was to lay the eggs there, all right? And these beautiful plants, the purpose of that plant is to supply food for the butterfly and for the larva and for the caterpillar and another butterfly. But the plants are like decimated. So, but they're really beautiful. We like the cycle. So with the mosquitoes, when they go and they bite you, and then they do that for food for themselves
Right.
and for potential laying eggs, because that's what they do.
Right. Mm-hmm.
From the time they bite you until they go to somebody else and they do the same thing, is that like right away?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They can do that. But what ends up happening too, the moms try to fill themselves up, right? So they'll go from one person to the next. Again, it's all about the blood feeding for them, because their process is to thinking inside a mosquito's brain. They want to do what they can to nurture
She's humanized the mosquito.
Again, right?
The 25 million year old mosquitoes.
They do what they can to make sure that they're able to nurture their baby. So yeah, they'll go and they'll bite, and you won't even know. They're sneaky. There's some sneaky little critters.
So tell us why when they bite you, why do we get why does it hurt?
Yeah, the itching and all that. What ends up happening, and Dr. Petrie, I'm sure, can explain this best, but what ends up happening, there's a proboscis that a mosquito has, which is like a needle. And what they do is, and you don't know it until it's done. And what they do, they inject something like a serum, but it can be something like I won't say an antibiotic, but it's something like an anesthesia for them, right? Where they go in, they take that proboscis and they move it around until they find what they can to get the blood out. They use that proboscis where they kind of drain the blood out of you. And then what ends up happening, it will leave. And some people are different, right? Some people automatically, they'll get a welt. Some people, they might not as much. So that causes the issue.
So Monique, you said that they secrete sometimes some anesthesia. Mm-hmm. That's not for us, it's for them.
Right.
Why do they need it?
Right. I think honestly, it's for them to be able to go in and do what they need to do without us knowing that they're actually doing that. Because if you think about it, you don't really know a mosquito is biting you until you're already bitten. So I think that's what it is.
All right. So lots of people think there's no, so you go out, you get some mosquitoes and you slap them, or you put on spray all over, which
right.
I'm not even sure what to do anymore. But there's some diseases that mosquitoes can share with us.
Yeah.
So what are some of those?
There's definitely, there's a few that we've come to find are more prevalent, but there's West Nile virus, there's dengue. Then of course there's Zika, which was a major epidemic here for us in Miami in 2016, which we were able to overcome. But what ends up happening, they carry these diseases and they transmit these diseases. So what we try to do is, before it even gets to that point, make sure that we're out doing the due diligence to try to keep those mosquitoes away. And then also too, we have scientists on staff, biologists, who are actually able to see what types of mosquitoes, if any, if they're carrying any types of diseases.
So Dr. Petrie said there were about 300 traps around town.
Right.
And they get a feel for where there's more mosquitoes.
Right. Yeah. So at any given time, our inspectors and our biologists, they go out and they take an account of what's in these traps, and they go back and we count the mosquitoes. And mind you, there could be tons in some of the traps, and then in some traps there are minimal.
So you bring back the trap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to ask how they get in, but how do they get out?
Yeah.
How do you count them?
Yeah, they one by one, and we have some great staff members. Our techs that
they suffocate them.
Yeah, no. What ends up happening, believe it or not, there's dry ice. What ends up happening, it's almost used as a part of the trap. So once the mosquitoes go into the trap, they're pretty much done, right? Because of the dry ice, but it kind of uses that to repel them. The mosquitoes don't know what they're getting into until it's too late. So what we do is we take the mosquitoes that were within the trap, and our biologists and our techs back at the office, they inspect them and they look for certain things. So we have these traps all over the county.
Do they use great big magnifying glasses?
They do. We have microscopes where they're able to look and actually see, really look at the mosquitoes. So,
and you separate the mosquitoes, and they say trap number one, there were 50.
Right, exactly. And that gives us an account too of where we might need to, do our treatments, more strategically, because that's
not like homeowners like me.
Yeah.
I think this was scientifically done. So, so you mentioned about the drain and cover.
Yes.
So that's a pretty classy sort of thing. Like, mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's really relevant. How did that come about?
So, our partnership with Florida Department of Health, based on Zika, the whole Zika epidemic in 2016, they came up with a way to try to get people to understand what it is that they can try to do to as far as education, as far as changing their mindsets of what can we actually do as residents to really try to keep mosquitoes at bay. So drain and cover. You think about it. If you're draining any standing water, and that's a part of our outreach messaging, drain any standing water that might be around your home. And on the other side of that coin is the cover side, where if you're out, particularly between the hours of dawn and dusk, you cover yourselves. So again, in our messaging, you'll see it on billboards, you see it in newspapers, we talk about it on radio. That whole drain and cover messaging, people can resonate and understand.
And we know that in the past 20 years, people's attention span has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter.
Right.
And there's commercials that are on. I see one, I'm not going to mention roofing, but for a 5-second commercial. Right. And there's some of the social media sites, they have commercials that are a couple seconds long. Mm-hmm. That's because that's what we're able to comprehend. Right. And Just Do It. Mm-hmm. It's a perfect thing, right? So this is something that we want people, when they go out in their yard, to go drain and cover, drain and cover, drain and cover.
And
very
not
clever.
Only for the residents themselves, but also too as a part of our outreach going into the schools. And again, with the children and the kids, the students, they're talking about drain and cover. And guess what they do? We present to them. They go home to mom and dad. Mom and dad, you have to drain. You need to turn the bird bath over. You need to make sure you're draining any standing water. And, we're going out for a walk in the park. We got to cover ourselves. That's what they said to do. So it resonates.
When my now very much adult daughter was in school, this is when there were a lot of shenanigans going on. She came home. Daddy, if you hit me, I'm going to call the police. I go,
where'd
perfect.
You get that from? Right.
Yes,
right.
It was like, great. Right. It's like, and you see that when we can start it that way, when you walk around the yard, you can do that. So people can walk around the yard and make sure there's no standing water.
Right.
So people have fish ponds. How does that work?
Right. And that as well, what we have fish ponds. And then, of course, particularly here in South Florida, we have homes that have those nice adorned fountains in their yards as well. So those are great. One thing about mosquitoes, they don't like a lot of movement. Right. So what ends up happening, if you have those fountains and the water is flowing as it should, then you should be okay. But what ends up happening if, for instance, it starts to malfunction and then you have water that might accumulate. So what ends up happening from there, that's a great breeding ground for mosquitoes. So we tell folks, you got to make sure that, and that's the same thing with pools too. Make sure that the water levels are correct. Make sure that your fountains are working properly, because if not, if you have any type of way where water can just stand, mosquitoes
and most water fountains have a place, especially when the water comes out, that is a little pond, little thing like this.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Could 1,000 eggs be in a spot this way?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As long as there's a pocket of water anywhere, mosquitoes can breed.
Okay,
Definitely.
Monique, I know you have a connection to the scientists. So the big question is, if there are 1,000 eggs that laid, how many of them are going to become full-fledged bloodsuckers? More or less.
I don't know about that one. That's a good question. Yeah.
But it's a bunch.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Undoubtedly. And wherever there's water standing.
So when that little child in school says, Miss Monique, let me ask you, how many mosquitoes are around during the summer?
Yeah.
What would your answer be?
Yeah. I would tell that student, mosquitoes are always around and you never know where they're coming from, but you have to do what you have to do to try to keep them away. Wear some repellent, and we'll tell the kids usually, what type of repellent they could go home and tell their parents to take, but also too, things that they can do around their home. And so it's not a matter of telling them yes or no or anything like that, but educating them more so that they have an understanding of what they can look out for.
So if there's a school teacher out there that says, I want my kids, when they come back to school, whenever that is, to learn more, should they call you?
They can call me. That's right.
Where should they call you?
Mosquito Control, the Mosquito Control Division, 305-592-1187.
So can we talk about Zika for a while?
Sure.
So I didn't realize it was so far back, but in 2016, we were reading these reports, watching this. It's over at Miami Beach, and there's pockets, I think parts of it in Woodwood. And so us uninformed folks would say, oh, the wind doesn't blow the Zika mosquito over to us? How is that possible?
Right.
What? Tell us.
Sure. What ends up happening, just based on the disease, the Zika, right? There's the mosquitoes that would carry the certain disease, and they might bite someone or what have you. That again could be a potential threat. Right. So what we're able to do is to have an idea of some of the locations where some of these things have occurred, i.e. Wynwood. And so what we would make sure that we do is go out and treat that area specifically where we might get word where there might be some type of disease transmission or something like that. So we've continued to do that just to make sure we're doing what we have to do to keep things at bay. But we haven't had any issues, believe it or not, since around that time.
So mosquito control is sort of like brushing your teeth. You just got to do it all the time. Yeah. It's just there, and that's what it is.
Yeah. And what we've come to find, just with the community, I mean, it's been great. We've had a community that is totally supportive of our mosquito control efforts. So we want to make sure that we're out there and we're doing the things that we need to be doing to try to keep the mosquitoes away. And our inspectors do a great job of doing that, right? But then also to educating our residents as to what they can do to help us help them. So it's a dual effort, but what we've been able to do is, to really have a study of some of the different areas where there might be more mosquitoes that are biting versus other areas, where we get calls, believe it or not. And we have a great system, working with our partner with 311, where if anybody's having an issue with mosquitoes or nuisance or anything of that nature, they can call 311 and we'll come out and we'll inspect and treat if necessary, that certain area. So, we try to be proactive in our mosquito efforts, but our mosquito control division is year round, around the clock.
So I live in horse country. There are a lot of plant nurseries that are there, and I like to go in the nurseries and drive the car to walk through the muddy stuff. It's just a thing that I like. And so I'm looking forward to about 6 weeks from now when it's 90 degrees outside and the mosquitoes are everywhere. But there are lots of places where it's just the other side of taking care of plants. But let's say there's somebody has old tires in their yard and things like that, because that stuff can hold water and it's really hard to get it out.
Right. Yeah.
So do people call in and say, hey, listen, 311, my next door neighbor's got this stuff going on, and I know those mosquitoes are coming from him, right? So what can the mosquito control division do about your neighbor?
Right. So we get those calls, believe it or not, and we tell our residents they can call anonymously. They don't have to say who they are.
All right, Johnny, see you later.
Just so you know. But yeah, and what we'll do is we'll go out and our inspectors are great. They will try to find where the source of the breeding is occurring. And again, it might be their neighbor's yard, it might be somebody in the back of them, but our inspectors are very diligent and looking to try to figure out, where that source of breeding might be occurring. Where is the nuisance coming from? And then what ends up happening, we have leave behind information, for the residents, so they have an understanding that we've been there. Granted, if it's somebody calling anonymously about their neighbor, we will still leave the information so that they know that we've been around. And we'll continue to treat if necessary. So
there's part of, I don't know if it's USDA or the county or another division about the African snails that were
right.
They go out and they leave the notices. Right. I've seen some of those snails. They're pretty big snails.
Those things are huge. I've seen them as well.
And I see their signs when they go out. So it's sort of like that. You have the mosquito control people. They go out and they go down the block and they say, hey. So it's been a while since I've seen or heard of the mosquito spray trucks. You still do that?
Right. We do have the trucks that go around. We do the adulticiding and the larviciding. And what ends up happening,
Wait, say it again real slow.
Yeah, sorry. The adulticiding and the larviciding. And what ends up happening, what we do, all of the spraying that we do throughout the county is based on high trap counts, right? So, we have, again, as Dr. Petrie mentioned when he was here, we have traps all over the county. And what we'll do is we'll look to those based on, where there are high trap counts of a high volume of mosquitoes. And then what we'll do, we have a spray schedule that's posted on our website and, all of our social media channels, 305 Mosquito. Where
305 Mosquito.
Yes, where our residents can actually find out, where we're going to be, where we are, where we're doing this adulticiding and the larviciding.
But you know that over the summer, you're going to be out there. You knew what last year where there was a problem, all right, which may be related to this year, all right? So any more planes?
No, we don't do planes unless, there is a major issue, like such as Zika or something like that, where the high volume counts or the high trap counts are just over the top. But that's not something that we do. And that's really based on a lot of a strategic process, right? We don't just go out and, we'll get calls from a certain community. Oh, we're having a mosquito problem. Okay, sure. We'll just fly out the plane. Right. We don't do that.
So lots of times when you get calls, this is what it sort of sounds like. You go and you research, oh yes, this is the fourth one and the trap shows us, I guess there's a real problem. The neighbors are calling now.
Right. And, we have some areas versus others, but it's a great thing where we are able to find out where these issues are occurring. And then what we'll end up doing too, sometimes we'll put a trap in an area to study it and to see exactly what may be going on. But then also too, just for, our residents and, our residents in Miami-Dade are great. They'll call, we'll go out and try to find where the source of the breeding is occurring. And they're so thankful that we're able to do that because, there are things that they don't know. And then we'll say, okay, well, you know what? Your source of breeding is occurring because you have this beautiful bromeliad plant.
Or you go to the house.
Oh yeah. We'll let our residents know. We do a leave behind.
And your wheelbarrow's filled with water.
There you go. Right. But we try to find what that source of breeding is, and a lot of times residents, I have this thing. Residents don't know what they don't know. So it's up to us to be able to educate them so that they have an understanding of why you are having the mosquito issue, why it might be occurring, and what you can do about it, and how we're here to help you as well.
So what scientific information could you give us to say why mosquitoes are more than 25 or 30 million years old? Thank you Dr. William Petrie, that told me that, which means they're a whole lot older than that.
Right.
What is it about them and roaches that they can continue to survive?
It's like multiply and survive. I think it's just all about, the nature of nature, right? I mean, I don't think we'll ever have it where mosquitoes will just be totally non-existent. We can't eradicate mosquitoes, but what we can do is try to figure out ways in which, to help them not be so much of a nuisance. But they're going to be here. We have to find different ways in trying to coexist, if you will.
What critters eat them?
That I'm not sure of. Actually, that I'm not sure of. I know dragonflies. I know they do. And then I know probably around certain pockets of water, where you have your rivers and lakes and things like that, if there are mosquitoes around, probably some of those creatures that are near there.
So we know mosquitoes like to hide in the shade because if they're in the sunlight, they get zapped. And I told this story last week, and Tommy doesn't need to laugh because I've told this will be the second time. So I'm down on the farm in a golf cart. Somebody says, "Oh, can I get some of the long ends off the tree?" I said, Sure. Go ahead, walk over there." And they pull it off, and in about 5 seconds, they're completely covered with mosquitoes. Now they realize I was 20 feet away.
Right.
So mosquitoes like to be in the dark places, all right? And
mosquitoes are very sneaky, right? I mean, they do have a brain, right? I mean, of course, they're not thinking on the level that
another humanized mosquito coming up
on our level, but they're what we have found is that they're very sneaky. So they'll just kind of lurk around and look for the perfect opportunity, and it depends on the different species. You have some mosquitoes who will just they'll lay on you and they'll just sit there, and you can try to get them away, but they're going to do what they can to try to make sure that they're getting that blood. But they like to just kind of lurk in, those shady areas, particularly if the humid conditions are around. They'll just kind of lurk and just look for the perfect opportunity to try to zone in and do what they need to do.
On the way in, Richard from our staff here was asked you a question. Why is it looks like the kids weren't getting, I think he said, why were they getting either more bit or less bit than I was, and they were standing next to each other? What's your take?
Interesting. There's been so many different, I guess, thought processes as it relates to that. Some people say that it has to do with the blood type. I don't know if that's been scientifically proven, but I do know, particularly, kids have a tendency to be outside quite a bit, whether it's shaded areas or near pockets of water or things like that, where mosquitoes have a tendency to be more prevalent. So that might be, one of the reasons why you might see kids getting more bit, because, and they're out doing their activities and things like that in those areas versus, adults. So I'm not sure about that. So
in the educational process for all of us, whether it's mosquitoes or whatever it is, the more we know, the more understanding we have, the less frightening it becomes. Like we put names on hurricanes. Why? Because we can focus on it. So we have these mosquitoes. So the more we know about mosquitoes, the more that we can do about it. And when they land on us, we know what they're going to do. Right. And we know that, and that's why we got the blood there. Are there different, historically in Miami-Dade County, are there different types of mosquitoes that if they were caught in a trap, and they put 10 of them out there, could the scientists tell you this is from North Miami, this is from South Miami, this is from the Everglades? Can they do that?
Yeah, believe it or not, there's a couple of species here that we see specifically. The Tenorhynchus, and I know this is
big words coming up here.
Albopictus, but what our scientists do and our techs do, they take these mosquitoes, back, and they're able to figure out which species they are. And there's different ways that they can do that. There's certain mosquitoes that have, black and white little dots on their legs. And the scientists and techs are able to identify which ones. And we might see the salt marsh mosquito more so in the Everglades or, down in South Dade. So that's what we'll find. But our scientists and techs are able to actually identify based on the traps. They take the mosquitoes out of the traps, and they're able to identify which types of mosquitoes are in certain locations.
Similar to I used to be into snakes. There are certain parts snakes are in certain parts of the country.
Right.
So okay, that's from over here. That's from over here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Mosquito identification is what we call it, back at the office.
So how old are the kids? What grade are they in when you go out to schools?
We do from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, believe it or not. I find the most interesting are like the younger kids. I mean, they just get so engrossed in the whole life cycle of the mosquito. And, they can't wait to go home and tell, their mom and dad or abuelo, abuela about what they've learned about mosquitoes. But to be able to change their thought process and maybe a little humanization as well. But I think it goes again with that whole educational aspect and, being able to change their thinking and their mindset so that they have an understanding. So we have coloring books. We do, like I said, outreach all over the county and things of that nature.
You ever been to the doctor's office and you see the skeleton or the muscles and you trace it down and say, oh, I heard that. That's the one.
That's right.
So that's the case with the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's over here.
Yeah.
That's one on this one.
Oh, yeah.
So we have, we're fortunate to have the Everglades not too far from here. And certainly within 10 miles, 12 miles from here, we get a lot of critters coming over, right? They fly over, all right? How far do those guys go, the mosquitoes?
Oh, they go miles. Oh, they can go definitely miles. We have studies on that, as far as like the traveling and the distance of how far mosquitoes can go. But yeah, they can.
Would they go to Aventura? Can we send them up there?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, we're going to send them up to Aventura.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Have a conversation with the mosquito that you come across and be like, you know what? Yeah, not here.
It's really amazing for something that we give so little credence to, how they've managed to survive, and they figure that out. A little birdie told me that sometimes the mosquitoes will tap on a body of water to see if there's fish in it, and then if they feel it, they won't lay the eggs around there. They'll go to something.
Well, I do know one thing. Mosquitoes.
I don't know if that's true, but that little birdie told me that.
Mosquitoes, as far as, because we get this all the time. People think that they have a lake in the back of, their yards and things like that. And, they think that they might have a mosquito issue. Mosquitoes don't really lie around those bodies of water like that. More so we've talked about the fountains and, things where there's standing water that just might be stagnant. That's where the mosquitoes are really live. But as far as the streams and the rivers, there's movement there. So there might not be, a lot of mosquito breeding.
So if I was out at a junkyard, there were a lot of tires in the middle of July, we're going to find mosquitoes.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And we get calls for that, with the mosquitoes and the whole tires. That has been an issue here in South Florida. And what we'll do is we'll go and we'll treat that area. And then we might even talk to whether it's the resident or, someone who might be near that location, letting them know this is an issue. Because again, people might not know. Some people do know about the tires, but some people might not know.
Can you imagine this? Susan, what'd you do today, my wife? And well, the mosquito control lady came over and told me, there's a mosquito problem and that little pond that we have out front might be doing it.
Right.
And it's like, that's what happens, right?
Right, yeah.
And all
what we do too is, again, as a part of our educational component, we let the residents, or if somebody might be dealing with a mosquito nuisance, things that they can actually do. So I think Dr. Petrie might have mentioned when he was here about BTI with the granules, where if there is an issue, they're able, and we do this with the bromeliad plants, right? Because we don't want people to get rid of their beautiful plants. They can, but, we don't tell people to do that. But we come up with ways in which they can help the situation. And so there's these BTI granules where you can just put those down, within your plants or, in certain pockets where it keeps the mosquitoes from actually breeding. So, yeah. So there's ways to combat.
Well, I love those plants, except for the water they collect and the spikes all over.
Right.
Gone.
Right. Exactly. But a lot of people have bromeliads here in South Florida. They're easy to maintain. Yes. So,
So what does the educational system look like for your department in the upcoming years?
Yeah, well, we're definitely looking to expand with our outreach. One thing myself and my counterpart, Michael Mood, have been able to do is to really make the outreach component a lot more robust, where instead of when our inspectors go out, instead of beforehand where, people might frown upon them, why are you here? Why are you in my yard? Our inspectors now are welcomed, right? So, our residents are actually like, oh, we're glad you're here.
Thank goodness you're here.
That. Right. So, some of the things that we want to definitely continue doing is, to continue to enhance our partnership with Dade County Public Schools and go into the schools and continue to do that, come up with more of a curriculum that our kids can have more of an understanding, the students.
When you say curriculum, mm-hmm. You mean try to get it into the school system, or when you go in and it's your class that you're doing?
Right, probably a little bit of both, actually. Like what we do now when we go into the schools is, I think I mentioned, we have coloring books that talk about the mosquito life cycle that the kids gravitate to. But then also too, I think having understanding of the entire life cycle of the mosquito and things that you can do to keep mosquitoes from biting and make that a part of science, because it is actually science. And, being able to do that and expand our outreach as well as other partnerships as well, because even with businesses need to know how they can keep mosquitoes away and how they can keep them from biting. They might have standing water around their business developments and things of that nature too. So expanding that outreach, getting to a point where, we're able to bring people in for tours of mosquito control and how it all works.
That is very cool.
To be able to make it to make it a more of a humanistic aspect to it, but also an educational humanistic aspect as well.
And those things last for a long time.
Oh yeah. And even too, with our social media, I mean, we've been able to really drive the traffic where, we have entities and organizations and individuals following 305 Mosquito on all of our social media channels. And that helps us as well, because, again, with the awareness aspect, you never know where our inspectors are going to be. You never know what communities are going to be in, but you follow us on 305 Mosquito, you know where we are.
305 Mosquitoes?
Yep. You know where we are, you know what we're doing.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Monique. Mm-hmm. We've all seen a hand inside that tube when the hand is covered with mosquitoes. All right. Is that like an experiment? You put different sprays to see if they're going to bite you? What is that about?
No, that's
or is that just PR?
Yeah. No PR. It's actually what we call landing rates, right? So, we have somebody that'll stick their hand in and they'll see basically how that mosquito is biting. And then they'll also see too how much of the blood that a mosquito can actually.
And you have volunteers or that's staff?
Yeah, and our scientists, like our Dr. Petrie and Dr. Ishik.
They'll put their hand in there.
They'll put their hand in there.
Okay, here's the question. In that tube, let's say it's this long, and you put your hand in and it's like this rubber around here, so they can't pull it out too fast.
Right.
And it's there. How many mosquitoes are going to land on them?
Right, exactly.
How many?
The landing count. Yeah, and it really depends. And what
give us a number.
Yeah, it could be 200, it could be 300, it could be 50, 25. It just depends.
And the reason it would be higher or lower is what?
Yeah, it just depends on like what's going on with the mosquito, right? And also too, looking at that mosquito, like for instance, if there's a certain species of a mosquito, being able to understand why they're biting, right? Being able to understand the number of bites that they might take within like one sitting, right? And it goes again with the whole scientific aspect of how our techs and our biologists are able to really study the mosquito.
So you brought up an interest. If a mosquito lands on you and it unbothered, how long will he be there taking blood?
Oh, until they get full.
And how long is that?
Yeah, that can be anywhere. It depends on, the mosquito. That can be a couple of seconds. That could be, I wouldn't even say a few minutes, but yeah.
And when they get done eating,
when they're done,
where do they go?
Yeah, they'll like, if they're within this, what we call this like landing rate trap here, right? If they're in there and, they're tired of biting, then they'll just kind of conk out on the side, they'll do that.
And how long does it take before they get hungry again?
That I'm not sure of. That's a good question.
I'm pretty fast. Not a week.
Yeah. No. But they will continue until they get what they need to get.
So that is food for them and also for them laying eggs.
Right. Correct. Yep. That's how they feed their eggs, nourish their eggs. Yep. From our blood.
And how'd you learn all this?
Yeah. Believe it or not, since, being a part of this wonderful mosquito control division, I've learned quite a bit about just the whole aspect of mosquitoes. Like, who would have ever thought? That's not something that you sit around and you have just a normal conversation about. But yeah, I've learned so much being a part of the division.
And how long you been with the mosquito?
Since 2017.
And prior to, so you've been almost 4 years plus. And before that, what did you do?
Yeah, Turkey Point, Florida Power and Light, handled communications there. So yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
The next time you guys come back, if you could bring some short little videos with us, all right, that would be really neat. We'll put them up on the screen and we could have a conversation. We could maybe we can figure out how to put it on hold as we see Dr. Petrie's arm in there. We got you in here.
That's right.
You can't pull it out.
That's
okay.
Right.
So one last thing, if we could, tell us about the future of your outreach program so more and more people are going to find out about mosquito control.
Sure. So, we're continuing, to expound on it. One thing that we're looking into now is, again, our whole drain and cover messaging to continue to make sure that we're maximizing that in the community. From our billboards, our social media platform has just, taken off tremendously where we have people following us. But then just to make sure that we're continuing to have people keep top of mind, drain and cover. and keep that message so that it resonates. So while we're out doing this outreach, people have an understanding of what they can do to help us help them keep mosquitoes away.
Boy, you're good at what you do.
Thank you.
I want you to, Monique, there's a young man, a young woman that's looking at you right now, and they're looking to their future. All right. This is almost post-pandemic. All right.
Almost.
Future is brighter
Yeah.
for most people.
Yes.
Would you talk to them? You got 1 minute to tell them about their future.
Yeah.
Which camera, Tommy? This one
Right here. So I would tell any student to go for your dreams, do what it is that you feel is in your heart is for you to do, whether it be science, whether it be technology. There's so much for you to take in. You're welcome to come onto our 305 Mosquito, our social media channels, and follow us and see about some ideas as it relates to science that we might be able to help you uncover.
Wow. And again, if somebody wants to reach you for the schools or to talk to you, how should they
Yep,
contact
they
you?
can log on to our social media channels and follow us there, 305 Mosquito, or contact our Mosquito Control Division at 305-592-1187.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's
It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Monique Spence from the Mosquito Control Division, Miami-Dade County. And congratulations to you. And if you want to learn, all right, she's the one to help teach you. Again, thanks for joining us. It's been live with Miami's Community News. Tommy.